Feel it in my bones, even when I move.
As of today, we are only 13 days until the start of the 2020 to 2021 NBA season. For teams that went on deep playoff runs in the bubble, this will be the shortest off-season in recent memory. Then there are other teams that did not meet the requirements to enter the NBA bubble, so they haven't played meaningful, organized NBA basketball since March. During this shortened season, the NBA draft and the start of free agency happened within 2 days of each other, and during that span of time, trades were being formally agreed upon and conducted. So it feels like the makeup of teams throughout the league seemingly shifted overnight. Throughout the month of December, I will be previewing every NBA team before the first games on December 22nd, meaning I will be posting every day until the season kicks off. 30 teams in 21 days. The preseason preview series. The next team to preview is the Houston Rockets. Last season, the Rockets boasted a record of 44-28, which put them at 4th in the Western Conference. Their season ended in the second round, losing to the Lakers in 5 games. Their top performers obviously was their dynamic duo last year, James Harden and Russell Westbrook, but I'm not going to talk about Russell Westbrook since he's not on the team. And their more interesting player outside of James Harden is Eric Gordon. Last season, James Harden put up 34 points per game, 7.5 assists, 6.5 rebounds on 44.5% from the field and 35.5% from three-point land on 12.4 attempts per game. This is run-of-the-mill numbers for James Harden. It's crazy that we see James Harden year in and year out put up above 30 points per game and we're not impressed because he's just been doing it so consistently, and it's just not surprising anymore. But it's insane that it's not surprising. And we know he was running Mike D'Antoni, Daryl Morey ball, isolations getting him to the rim, isolations drawing a foul and getting free throws, or isolations and shooting step back threes. James Harden is the best ever to really do this type of basketball. Depending on how you feel about James Harden, I think we can definitively say he is at least a top 5 isolation scorer, somewhere in there, of all time. Now, before the news started to come out about him wanting to get traded and him wilding out and going to little babies' parties, and going to strip clubs and whatnot, not going to training camp, I had this idea, or I was thinking about, with Mike D'Antoni and Daryl Morey being gone, will Harden revert back to a traditional way of playing basketball? Because Mike D'Antoni is really the coach who instilled this 36 minutes of James Harden doing isolations and everybody standing outside. He's really the coach that instilled that type of basketball. And Daryl Morey is the GM that continued to adhere to D'Antoni to get him whatever players D'Antoni needed to make the James Harden system work. But now both of those people are gone, the head coach and GM are gone. I thought if James Harden was still going to be on this team, would he revert back to being a shooting guard? Because that is the position he played before the arrival of Mike D'Antoni in Oklahoma City. Obviously, he was a shooting guard because Russell Westbrook was running point. James Harden was more of a traditional shooting guard. Yes, he had playmaking ability, but he was still a player who was great at playing off the ball. Even his time in Houston before Mike D'Antoni's arrival, when Kevin McHale was the head coach, James Harden played like a shooting guard, playing off the ball, obviously getting his on-ball looks with pick-and-roll plays on the wing from time to time, but point is, he was a traditional shooting guard with off-ball movement and whatnot. It's a question of whether or not James Harden would revert back to the traditional way of playing basketball, or is he so entrenched in the way he's been playing basketball for the past 4 years. Now, Eric Gordon, the only reason I say he's the more interesting player on the team outside of James Harden is because last year last year was one of his worst seasons in recent memory. He put up 14.5 points per game, but it was on 36.9% from the field and 31.7% from 3 on 8.4 attempts. So does this signify a hard regression coming soon? I think he's only 32 years old, so you would hope not. You would hope that he's not regressing at this age, but different players have different primes and different times of regressing at different ages. So maybe this is a signal that Eric Gordon's best days are behind him. And that's horrible news for the Rockets, because if they were trying to win now and have as much talent on the team on hand, you're paying Eric Gordon so much money over the next 3 years because last season he got that contract extension in the middle of the year. Or actually, I don't know if it was during last season or before it. The point is he has 3 more years on his contract, making $18 million per year annually. Actually, it goes up. It goes from the first of the 3 years is $17 million, the second of the 3 years is $18, and then the last year is $19 million. So this has potential to be one of the most, or one of the worst contracts in the league based off of his output last season. When you're paying somebody like Aaron Gordon this much money, this much of your resources going to this player who might be falling off, that's really going to be hard for your team to contend and really going to hurt your chances of having any flexibility in terms of transactions via trading or free agency signings. So now, speaking of the offseason and speaking of adjustments, let's talk about the adjustments they made this offseason. Let's talk about the smaller trade first. They traded Robert Covington away to the Trailblazers for a 2020 first round pick, and obviously in this most recent draft. And then for a 2021 protected first round pick. I don't know the protection on it. I got to research that a bit more. And Trevor Ariza, I believe that was just to make the contracts match. Obviously, this is a trade that Houston made to really replenish their draft capital after trading Chris Paul and 4 first round picks. I think 2 of them are unprotected and 2 of them are swaps. But they did do that for Russell Westbrook. So they lost a lot of draft capital there. Now they're trying to replenish it. That is a solid job by the new GM. I forgot his name. But the big trade here was John Wall and Brody being swapped for each other. The exact trade was obviously the Rockets trading Brody for John Wall, but they're also getting a future first round pick, which is probably protected. I don't know the exact protection on it. It's a pretty lateral trade, not because they're the same talent. We all can agree that Russell Westbrook is better than John Wall at this point in their careers. But I'm saying it because it's really the same type of contract and length and size. They're both making upwards of $40 million per year over the next 2 years, I think. And they're both the same type of player. They both love getting to the rim. They're slashing point guards dependent on their athleticism that are aging with no consistent jump shots. Wall is slightly a bit more pass first than Brody. Like John Wall is he has a bit more play discipline. And so in this trade, it's pretty lateral for the type of player that the Rockets are getting. They're getting the worst player, but they're getting another first round pick to really replace the draft capital. And it's not like they're getting a much worse player. I mean, based off of the open runs from John Wall that we've been seeing throughout November and early bit of December, John Wall looks like he's back, but I mean, those are open runs. This is not NBA talent that he's playing against, unless you believe that Michael Beasley is NBA ready talent that you want to compare him to. But I mean, so they're getting somebody who still has the potential to be all-star caliber, and they also got a pick in return. So I think this is a good trade for the Rockets to make. And it's also probably the only trade that they were going to be able to make regarding Russell Westbrook's contract that would allow them to get a draft pick in the future, because Russell Westbrook's contract is so massive. This is like, John Wall is like the only player that you could really match contracts with and also get a first round pick out of it. So this is a dub of a trade from the Rockets, I believe. In terms of the draft, they drafted Kenyon Martin Jr. He is the son of Kenyon Martin, NBA All-Star in the early 2000s. That's all I know. I remember he played Jesser 1v1 and he lost. So, I mean, he wasn't really trying, so don't put too much weight on that. In terms of signings, the Rockets bring in Christian Wood on a 3-year, $41 million contract. Technically, it was a sign and trade, but I really view sign and trades as signings. In this sign and trade, they threw in Trevor Ariza, I believe, to make the contracts work. And then the first round pick they got from Portland this year, which became Isaiah Stewart. On Detroit's end, they're fucking stupid for letting him go. But on the Rockets' end, they are very smart for snagging him, because they were in desperate need of a big man, because they're not playing the small ball Morey ball anymore. And they get that in Christian Wood, who can play either power forward or center. He's a big man that can space the floor, which is more valuable in this NBA every year in and year out. And he's going to have to be able to space the floor because he's playing with John Wall. And we know John Wall likes to get to the rim, so there's going to be a lot of potential for pick and pops that John Wall can run with him. And not just John Wall, James Harden as well. Christian Wood, I think in the month or two before the hiatus, he was averaging about 20 points per game and 8 boards. Let me just look up his exact stat line. In the month of February, he played 11 games and started only 6 of them, but he still managed to put up 19 points per game and 9 rebounds while shooting 39% from three-point land and 52% from the field. And then in March, in 5 games played and 5 games started, he put up 26.5 points, 9.5 rebounds on 43.5% from the three-point line and 62% from the field. Now, I'm not saying this is definitely the same player that the Rockets are going to get back, but this has to be a good sign for the type of player that you're going to be getting. This is a player who basically only just started getting valuable minutes for an NBA team. Yeah, he's going to be going into his 5th year in the league, and last season, in those 2 months, were the only real times of where he was getting valuable NBA minutes, and look at the production he was putting up. And also, the guy is only 24 or 25 years old, so that is a bit of young talent that might be able to be a part of a rebuild if the Rockets are going down that path. They also signed DeMarcus Cousins on a minimum contract, another big man that the Rockets were in desperate need of. He can only play center, but he could be the starting center on the team if the Rockets decide to play Christian Wood at power forward, or he can be one of the best backup centers in the league. Obviously, you're praying that DeMarcus Cousins can just be healthy during a 72-game season, but this is a low-risk, high-reward type of signing. They also brought back Ben McLemore, who put up great minutes for the Rockets last season as a marksman from downtown. Currently, this is what the depth chart looks like for the Rockets. At the guard positions, they have James Harden, John Wall, Chris Clemens, and Ben McLemore. At the forward positions, they have Christian Wood, Eric Gordon, PJ Tucker. I think he's moving back to forward position and not playing center. Sterling Brown and Bruno Caboclo. Is this the 2-year? This is the 2 years away from being 2 years away guy. And then at the center positions right now, the only true center they have is DeMarcus Cousins, unless they decide to run Christian Wood at center as well. Coaching them now is Stephen Silas, who's been an assistant coach for the past 20 years. This is his first time being a head coach. He's a younger head coach. He's only 47 years old. His last gig on an NBA coaching staff was his tenure in Dallas in 2018 to 2020. So take that for what you will. Next season, I project the starting lineup to be John Wall, James Harden in the backcourt, Eric Gordon at small forward, power forward Christian Wood, and center will be DeMarcus Cousins. Estimating the record was tough because if you were to ask me 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'd probably say that their record would be closer to being 42-30. But now with these James Harden rumors, and I think it's a bit more likely that he gets traded during this season. I think he'll get traded mid-season. I don't think the trade's going to happen preseason. So I think there's going to be a couple of, maybe not a couple, I think there'll be 20 or 30 games played with James Harden in the lineup. I think they'll be rather successful in those games, but then once he does get traded, the team will fall off drastically. So I'm just going to try and put it in the middle and say they're going to be a 500 team this year. And I think 500, being a 500 team in the Western Conference gets you about the 10th seed. So obviously this will be the Rockets' first time missing the playoffs in 5 years? Ever since James Harden came over to Houston. The direction of this Rockets team, they're selling. I mean, they already traded Russell Westbrook for a player, but they really wanted to just get a first-round pick in return. And I think they're eventually going to trade James Harden. They're going to hope to get a top-tier young prospect for him, or maybe a big contract and at least 4 first-round picks, or some combination of the two. We've heard about him maybe going to Philly. We've heard about him maybe going to Brooklyn. But there are a bunch of other teams that could be linked to him, because more often than not, the teams that we think these players are going to get traded to, it doesn't really happen, and some team comes out of nowhere to snag them. Some returns from these two teams, like from Philly, I'm pretty sure the Rockets would want Ben Simmons and maybe like 1 or 2 first-round picks, but maybe Ben Simmons will just be enough. From the Nets, I think the Rockets would want LeVert, Dinwiddie, Jared Allen, and probably 3 first-round picks. But I'll probably make a video about James Harden trade ideas and trade packages. But yeah, I think the Houston Rockets are going to try and hit the reset button this season. Mike D'Antoni, gone. Daryl Morey, gone. James Harden, soon to be gone. He's been hitting clubs, celebrating with Lil Baby, and missing Rockets training camps, and he's expressed that he wants to be traded to a contender, assumingly because he doesn't see a bright future in Houston. The only question is, when will it happen? The Rockets have spent the past 5 years as elite contenders out west but have been unable to break their ceiling. Now it seems like that era is over, and the Rockets will now attempt to start their rebuild by getting numerous first-round picks, an ascending young star, or both in trading away James Harden.